Oh, wow, we're live. Oh, I gotta do the chat. Chat up. All right. Hello, folks. I'm gonna go spam some people on Discord with this live stream. So give me a moment to go spam people. Find the right buttons. If you haven't joined our Discord yet, you should do so because you can get spammed every Thursday. Well, almost every Thursday. Videos and streams. There we go. Hey, Sean, what's up, dude? Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Welcome to the stream, dude. Nice commercial, Luke. What commercial, Hot Dice? What commercial did you see? Okay. Tonight, we are talking about Counterspell. Because apparently, it's making the rounds again. Someone stirred up the pot. Counterspell was updated in UA 7 that released recently, and word has it that the update is less than stellar. Let's talk and rant a bit, shall we? I'm composing my spam message to Discord right now, and I gotta get a link. Oh wait, I think I have the link. There we go. I have the link. There we go. There's the link. And now I'm going to at people. I'm adding people. There we go. Wee spam. Yay. All right, there we go. I have spammed. Oh, I should go spam people. I should do it. I should do it on Twitter too. I should go do it on Twitter. Oh, I gotta find my Twitter account. Go over here, close, go to Twitter, social media platforms, Twitter. Oh, I should just copy paste exactly what I put on Discord to make my life easier. Let's go there. There. I go back to Twitter. Post. Make a post. I love this whole Twitter. The Twitter like thing apparently is to ask people questions to get engagement. So there's one post I just looked at. The guy's like, I got a workout in this morning. Who else is doing exercise today? It's like, okay, we're just trying to, get engagement by asking questions because nobody's going to talk about their workouts today. All right. I had to get rid of that. We don't need that. Dunk. And then I have a pretty picture. I can put my pretty picture on here. Where's my pretty picture? Specific topics. There it is. Put that right there. Hold on a second. What are you doing? No. Get that off from there. I have a pretty picture. Come on. My pretty picture, baby. There we go. That's okay, I guess. Let's put some spacing right there so that it looks D&D 5e Dungeon Master, baby. Dungeon Master. Dungeon Master. All right, cool. Post that baby. Post. All right, I've posted it. Spammed and posted. I've done my part. Pseudo noob. What's up, dude? How you doing? T2 the monkey. Hey, what's up, man? What's wrong with Counterspell? Well, what's wrong with just, banishing your players to the nether realms so they sit the game out and don't get to play? What's wrong with any of these mechanics? Nothing at all. We don't use Counterspell that much. No, I don't use it a whole lot either. Actually, in one of my games, I actually have, she's a sorcerer. She uses Counterspell a lot. I think she does. If I remember correctly, she does. Are they changing Counterspell? I don't know. We're gonna talk about that tonight. That's exactly why we're here. Do you ban it or house rule it? I don't ban it. I would like to, because I think it's horrible, but I don't. I have a spell dueling rule set that was actually published in Lair magazine number 33, I believe. Which Lair magazine was it? Beep, 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 beep. No, 23. Lair magazine 23. Warfare and Wizardry. We made some spell dueling rules, which that's what I use in my Ancient Dragon game. But I have like an unspoken rule with my players that like if they don't use Counterspell on me, I won't use it on them, and then we can all be happy and play the game and not get shut down. Nixon, what's up, dude? How you doing, man? I got orange. I think orange. Yeah, orange is rubbing against my leg down here. Timeless plays is just getting into DMing, so it's intimidating. Don't worry, dude. You'll be fine, man. This is what you want to do. I'm gonna give you like a 10-step plan. All right, to become a better game master. All right, here you go. 1, binge all my videos. Cool. You're here, so you might already be doing that. All right, sweet. Step number 2, just start and don't worry about it, and just tell your players you're new, and you know, whatever, it'll be fine. What's the next one? Oh yeah, come to these live streams and ask questions, because that's mostly what we do. Like, we're gonna talk about Counterspell at the very beginning of this live stream, but there's probably at least the second half, if not the second like 2/3 of it, is just gonna be me answering questions. And that's what I do almost every single live stream, is just answer questions. So come and ask questions. Also on my Discord, my Discord is, gosh, I'm sure there are players there, but like it's probably predominantly game masters, dungeon masters on my Discord. So you can go over there and ask questions as well. People can help you. So don't worry about it. Everybody's new at some point. They're getting into it and they probably feel overwhelmed and intimidated. That's just normal. Just work through it and keep trying and, you know, ask questions and stuff. You'll be good. Stunned. Oh, I hate stun. I hate stun. Oh, stunned is the same thing. It's like, welcome to not playing the game. It sucks. I hate it. That's one of the reasons I like Pathfinder 2. They're stunned. Has a different. It just takes away one of your actions. If you're stunned 1, you lose 1 action. Stunned 2, you lose 2 actions. Stunned 3, well, then you suck. You lose 3 actions. But if I remember correctly, the stun value decreases. Decrements, I think is the name, by every single round too. But anyway, I think it's a much better implementation. I also love Cobalt Press's Tome of Beasts monsters, because they put the immunity to being stunned in some of their monsters, which is very, very good. They did a good job there. By the way, for probably almost all of my boss monsters, they cannot be stunned. Like, that's an immunity they have. It's just super lame. It makes for like a lame combat. Nobody's having fun. Casting sleep. Yeah, but you know, I see what you're saying about sleep, but sleep is like low level. You know, once you get too much higher, it's kind of useless. It doesn't do a whole lot. But I can see what you're saying. You put them to sleep and then you're just like dead, 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 dead. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, it's the same thing. Except that, you know, you like grow out of sleep and it no longer gets the job done after a certain level. So it's, you know. What kinds of music do I play during the games? My in-person games, I think it's the same answer for both, actually. Yeah, it is. What is it? What do I call that? What is it? Tabletop audio? Yeah. Tabletop audio is the platform I play during my games. I play it during my patron games that I run for my patrons. And then I play at my in-person games here. I just put it on I have like a surround sound system on my basement here. We put it on the surround sound, and so it's just tabletop audio. And then I'm one of their patrons too. So I pay the guy. Basically, I want to make sure that I can like play his music legally and not be, you know, like stealing his music type of thing. So I contacted him and he's like, yeah, if you just support me on Patreon for whatever you feel is fair, you can just use my music on your streams and I don't care. So I've been supporting him for 3 years now or something. Anyway, that's what I use. Yeah, I love tabletop audio. Is very, very solid. You search for what you want, get some really cool environmental sounds without like lyrics where they're talking and stuff, which is super important. So we're gonna argue about game mechanics today, aren't we? I got like 2 cats down here, everyone. Well, Orange is gone, and now we have Squirty Pie. Wee. I got a cat in the bed sleeping too. This guy's gonna jump up here. Check this stuff out. That's little guy. Little guy is sleeping. Oh, now he's gonna get up. He's like, you put me on camera? Well, I'm getting out of the bed if you're gonna put me on camera. What a jerk. I don't want to be on camera. I did not give my consent to be on camera. That is messed up. Squeaky's gonna come up and be on our lap today. All right, we should probably start the stream. I think we're ready to start the stream now. We've jibber jabbered for a little bit. I've actually been answering some questions too. All right, let's do this. All right, buddy, get your big butt out of the way. What is going on down here? Little guy, you're not getting your belly rubbed. All right, I gotta push the buttons. Whee, there we go. Stream has started. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the live stream. Tonight we have a wonderful show planned for you. I'm gonna sit here and talk about the proposed changes that came out in the latest Unearthed Arcana. It came out like a few days ago or something. Like this would happen. Like I was on Twitter just talking and stuff, and then everybody's talking about Counterspell, and I'm just like, why is Counterspell? And then I was like, you know what? I should just talk about Counterspell. Cool, because for some reason people are worked up about it again. And then I was like, why? Then I was thinking, why are people worked up about Counterspell again? And then turns out I saw a tweet where they proposed some changes to Counterspell in the latest Unearthed Arcana that came out. Their 2024 version of D&D. They're still playtesting it. They're supposed to publish it in 2024. Like, at what point are you going to like solidify the rules, playtest the rules in their entirety, multiple times, multiple iterations to make sure that they're tight and solid, and then get it laid out, like layout and stuff in like, the documents, the PDFs they got to send for printing, and then send it off to printing. Like, when are they going to do all that? Like, I don't know how, like, and here's the thing, you guys, this is interesting too. When you're running, like, the larger a company is, the slower everything works. Like, the bigger you get, like, the more... Squeaky, why are you scratching my wall? You knock it off. You're just, it's like, all of the gears and stuff get googered up when you have a big company. The bigger the company is, and the more, like, especially when you have different tiers of management, and every tier of management slows everything down. And people got to sign off on stuff. Everything takes a whole lot longer. So, like, if I had a publishing deadline for something in 2024, my team is small. We can pivot on a dime and make it happen. It's not a big deal. But a big, huge, massive company making like 3 core rule books, and they're still figuring out what the rules are going to be, and they haven't even started playtesting. It's crazy, because right now the playtests aren't playtests. It's like they're getting like it's marketing, not marketing. It's customer feedback. They're getting feedback from players on what they like and don't like, to inform like the rules, but they still have to playtest them like in their entirety. They need to put all the rules together in one packet of rules to send out to playtest groups. When is that happening? Because they're still proposing changes to stuff. Like, so when is the real playtest happening? I feel like, and 2024 is the 50th anniversary of D&D, so they have to publish those rules in 2024. Because it's the celebration. The celebration of their 50th anniversary is to charge you money to buy new books, right? So they got to get those out in 2024. So I don't know how the OGL put them way back. I bet you they lost 4+ months because of that whole thing, and they're probably way behind. But they'll squeak them out. Don't worry. They'll cram them through. It does raise questions as to the quality that we can expect. Obviously, that's a concern. I would like to see it done well. Because I don't want to, it would be great for it to be done well, but I have my concerns, and we will see, I suppose, when it actually comes out. But anyway, that's not the point. That's a side that's a tangent. The Unearthed Arcana that came out, they proposed changes to Counterspell, and we're gonna take a look at those and stuff today. It'll be fun. Hello, Princess Canuta. How you doing? Cat in the box. She put a cat in the box in the chat. Nice. There is no cat in the box right now. The cats are beginning to gather though. Squeaky is rubbing against my camera. You're not allowed to rub against my camera, man. I have my cameras perfectly positioned to show everybody the parts of my basement that are presentable and to hide the parts of the basement that like are not presentable. All right. Everyone does it this way, including Paizo. You don't give them crap for it. Oh, really? Paizo does it this way? I don't know. Well, if that's the way they do it, dude, like, and they don't actually do, like, if companies don't do full playtests and stuff, I think that's cause to give crap. Yeah. And I'm pretty sure I was talking to, who was I talking to? I was talking to somebody who knows. And Paizo didn't do a compressed short playtest when they were releasing Pathfinder 2. I'm pretty darn sure they did it over the course of a good span of time. Okay? Because, well, let's be frank, the Pathfinder 2 rule set is tight. It's super tight. And you can't say that the same about other rule sets. So. We're gonna talk about Counterspell. Yes, we are. I'm just taking my good slow time getting there, you know. It's all the pressure. All you guys are staring at me. Lots of pressure on me, you know. Did he just knock my camera again? Okay. It's gonna be a good boy there. Was that the roll for combat, guys? Yeah, I don't remember. I mean, it might have been, I had Mark Seifter on here. I'm sure we might have talked about it, or it was Stephen Glicker. Maybe we talked about it. I'm not sure, but I'm sure it was probably one of them. I don't know who else I would have been talking to about it. So it was probably one of them. Yeah, you're probably right. Yeah. Yeah, Mr. Gore, it's all right. You're good, dude. I'm going to talk about Counterspell, and you know, the VOD will always be here, and there's a very high probability I'm going to probably chop my little spiel about Counterspell and make a standalone video with it, because, you know, people get riled up about this every time it comes up. So the rush probably explains their mistakes in some of their most recent books. Well, you know, that's the crappy part about publishing. As somebody who publishes books, I can tell you firsthand that you can send something through like multiple levels of review. You're always going to miss stuff. You will always miss stuff. You can't catch everything. So, I mean, as much as I dislike some of the things Wizards of the Coast has done, I mean, I'm not gonna beat on them too much over typos slipping through or stuff showing up in the books that should have been caught, because you're always going to miss something. You're always going to miss something. And that's just life of publishing. You always will. Like we have our writers write stuff, and then we have like I read through stuff, and then we got Zach who reads through stuff. We have an editor, you know, and we used to have other team members that would read through stuff, and we still miss stuff. It still happens, you know. And then when we take stuff that it always happens. You always miss stuff. You can't catch it all. It's impossible. Bath time for the cats. Oh, is what, licking himself? Probably on camera, licking himself. There must be a mess off camera. Well, you know, I don't think there's a big mess. Like, I have like, there's not really, this is kind of got, my desk is not like neat and orderly, but there's not a big mess anywhere. Like, I keep my house, my wife and I keep our house very clean and orderly. Like, it's not a mess. Our house is not a mess. Oh, now my camera got screwed up. I do have a table over there that has like a few books piled on it, so it's not super orderly. It's not horrible. It's not horrible. All right, you guys ready to do this? Let's talk about Counterspell. All right. So the first thing that I want to do, let me pull this bad boy up here. Yes, little guy. The new Counterspell. The proposed changes to Counterspell came out in the Unearthed Arcana. And we're going to take a look at it right now and see exactly what folks are talking about. Because like, if you go on Twitter and other places, like I think if you go to the D&D Beyond forums, people are talking about it. There's threads all over the place. And a lot of people seem to not be super happy with some of the changes to Counterspell. So we're going to take a look at the Unearthed Arcana, and then we're going to talk about it in a little bit more depth. So let's go over to our monitor here, where we can see Counterspell. We're going to find it. Okay, I got to go find it. Counterspell. There we go. Let's find it. Here we go. All right. So I want to read this part right here. I think this is pertinent to the discussion because it gets behind the reasons they're saying they're changing it. Counterspell now requires the target to make a saving throw instead of requiring the caster to make an ability check. The spell's previous design failed to account for the capabilities of the target, which is rectified by the new design. The new design also specifies that the countered spell must be cast with spell components, and if the countered spell uses a spell slot, that slot isn't expended. Okay. So, basically, the way Counterspell used to work before, you would just make like a spellcasting ability check to see if you countered it or not. Well, if you cast it, well, it was a little more complicated than that. If you cast third level Counterspell and it was the level of the spell being countered was 3 or below, then it would automatically be countered. You could upcast it as well to automatically counter spells at the level that you upcast to. But if the spell was higher than the 3rd level that you cast it at, or if you upcast at 4th level and the spell was like a 9th level, then you had to make a spellcasting ability check. And that doesn't account for the power of the creature that is casting the spell. And so they wanted to have the idea behind the change, if I'm understanding their reasoning properly, is that they wanted to make it so that the ability of the spellcaster casting counterspell and the ability of the spellcaster being countered, the target, their abilities, their respective abilities are being taken into consideration. All right. And so now the way they changed it, and we're going to look at that right now, kind of does that. I would say not super well because of the way they implemented it. We're going to get into that in a second, but let's take a look at the new counterspell, which is right here. Oh, don't do jump too. We don't want to look at jump. Counterspell, level 3 abjuration, sorcerer, warlock, wizard, casting time reaction, which you take when you see a creature within 60 feet of yourself, casting a spell with verbal, somatic, or material components. That's not changed. Range 60 feet, components somatic. I don't know if the components have changed. I think it probably was always somatic. I'm not sure. Duration instantaneous. That's the same. You attempt to interrupt a creature in the process of casting a spell. The creature must make a Constitution saving throw. I think that's probably the first thing that is probably not ideal, and we'll get into that in a moment. On a failed save, the spell dissipates with no effect, and the action, bonus action, or reaction used to cast it is wasted. If that spell was cast using a spell slot, the slot isn't expended. Is not expended. So if I get countered, I lose my action to cast the spell, but the spell slot is preserved. So that's a huge change right there. And also they're now making it so that the target has to make a Constitution saving throw. And there's no upcast to this at all. It's simply, you could now take a 3rd level counter spell and you could counter Meteor Swarm at 9th level, for instance. And the targeted creature just makes a Constitution saving throw. Those are basically the changes that are being made. So what does that mean? Well, I think the first thing, it's like they're mechanically, they are technically taking into account the capabilities of the spellcaster and the capabilities of the target creature who's being counterspelled. They are, but not super well. The caster that's casting counterspell, their capability is the DC, the difficulty class, which is based on their spellcasting ability score and their and their level. Yeah, because their proficiency bonus goes in there. And then how the capabilities of the target creature are being taken into consideration is by their Constitution saving throw, which is not at all linked to their ability as a spellcaster. Like if I am a charisma based spellcaster or a wisdom based spellcaster or a intelligence based spellcaster, my Constitution saving throw is completely independent of those abilities. My Constitution saving throw is dependent upon my Constitution score and my proficiency bonus. So the proficiency bonus is a reflection of your overall power, but now it's not at all correlated to my ability score that's related to my spell casting. So I feel like that's a big fail right there, because Constitution, why not my wisdom saving throw or my intelligence saving throw or my charisma saving throw? That would be a lot more correlated to my capabilities as a spellcaster if I were making those saving throws. Way more correlated. Constitution seems pretty unrelated to my capabilities as a spellcaster. So why I would be making a Constitution saving throw is beyond me. So that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. I think it should have been, it would have been preferable to make it my Intelligence saving throw, Wisdom saving throw, or my Charisma saving throw. That would have made a lot more sense thematically, and just, I don't know, realistically make more sense. So that's the first beef I have with this change. Next, you can see that it's based on your Constitution saving throw. So spellcasters have always really, should have probably put something in Constitution so they're not too super squishy. But now there's even more incentive to bump your Constitution. So you've got to bump your primary casting ability score. Let's just pretend it's Intelligence because you're a wizard. You need to get your Dexterity up so that your armor class doesn't suck too bad. And now Constitution becomes even more important as you're building your character. So that is one of the consequences of this. Now you have to kind of bump your Constitution. The second thing is that PCs and monsters are now also heavily incentivized to take certain feats such as Resilience, which is going to give you +1 to your Constitution, and then proficiency in your saving throws for Constitution, which will help you not get countered anymore. Now, boss creatures, boss monsters, especially legendary monsters, are not going to be affected by this nearly as much. Because why? Well, if I have magic resistance, I will get advantage on my Constitution saving throw. And if I have legendary resistances, well, then I can just decide to succeed if I wanted to. Now, having to use a legendary resistance on a failed Constitution saving throw against a counterspell kind of sucks. I wouldn't want to use that myself, but you know, the option is there for me to do that. Now, Mook monsters, however, like if I'm the game master, my Mook monsters are really going to get torn into. They're going to, most spellcasters in the game, like monsters we're talking about, have low Constitution scores, and they are not proficient in Constitution saving throws, generally speaking. And so your standard ordinary run-of-the-mill spellcasters, enemy spellcasters, are going to get torn apart by Counterspell. Their Constitution saving throws are going to be super low, and they're going to get countered all the time. Just, they don't even have a chance, perhaps, to make it. Because as the spellcaster's DC goes higher and higher, my Constitution saving throw is still going to be like a +1 or a +2. It's going to really suck. And so Mook monsters, if I'm the game master, I might as well not even use them. They'll get counterspelled every single time. And so these are some of the ramifications, I think, of their changes to Counterspell. Oh, there are some more. We'll keep going. I got some more too. The other thing that we see happening here is that the last part here is that if the spell was cast using a spell slot, the slot isn't expended. Okay, so that really has no effect on enemy spellcasters. Like if I'm the game master, like I don't care if I get to keep my slot or keep my spell slot, or if I lose it, because generally speaking, enemy spellcasters last about 3 rounds, which means that like I have all these spell slots, and if I get to keep it or don't get to keep it, it doesn't really impact things a whole lot. However, for characters like player characters, if you get to keep your slot, that's actually going to help you a lot, because you didn't lose that spell slot, that expendable resource. You get that back. So that is probably overall something that benefits players more than it benefits monsters. Monsters, I would say, enemy spellcasters, I would say, is probably a neutral change. It has no, like, de facto has no impact. Technically it does, but de facto it really doesn't, according to how the game usually turns out in combat and stuff. But good for players. That'll help players out. You also no longer need to use higher slots to counterspell. Like you don't have to upcast it anymore. You just 3rd level counterspell, boom, that'll get the job done. You could literally, like I said before, you could literally counterspell Meteor Swarm, a 9th level spell, with a 3rd level spell. And if you have like the Archmage from the monster manual, I don't know what the Archmage's Constitution saving throw is, but I'm gonna guess that it's a +2. You would a low level character is going to easily counterspell an Archmage, because even if the Archmage is casting 9th level spells, I think they have 9th level spells, they should. Even if the Archmage is casting 9th level spells, their Constitution modifier is like a +2, and I don't recall offhand, but I don't think that they have legendary saves or magic resistance. They're just going to get countered every time. So your 5th level character is going to counterspell that Archmage, and they have almost no hope. I mean, there's a chance, but it's not super high. So I don't know. That seems, again, it seems like things are swinging more in favor of the players and the player characters and making them a little bit more powerful, whereas monsters kind of get the shaft on that change. That's kind of the feeling that I'm getting from all of that. And I might be missing something, but that's kind of what I see just from my analysis of it. Now, we had talked about before how they stated the reason for the change being that they wanted to take into account the capabilities of the caster and the target. Well, they did technically do that, but they implemented it poorly. So I think that a better way, I already mentioned one way that they could have implemented it better. And I think a second way that it could be better implemented is the concept of a spell duel. And in fact, if you think about it, where does the idea of counterspell come from anyway? It comes from the idea of wizards or sorcerers locked in a spell duel, casting magic at each other and being able to negate each other's magic with their magic. So the idea of spell dueling, I think, is probably integral to the counterspell in the game. It's probably part of where it originated from. And so I think a spell dueling, the idea of spell dueling is a much better way to think of counterspell than just like, you know, we nullified your spell is gone. No, it's more like two casters are locked into a battle with each other, pitting their power against the other's power to see who's going to come out on top. And so to really pull this idea of spell dueling into place and make it feel more like spell dueling rather than just like, oh, I cast a spell and your spell's gone sort of thing, I think that we should have opposed ability checks. Like, I think that the player character, if you're running a wizard, you should be making a roll on your d20 that's modified by your intelligence score, your ability modifier for intelligence, and by your proficiency bonus. And then if you're the monster, if you're the enemy spellcaster, then you should also be rolling a d20 modified by your spellcasting ability modifier. Let's pretend it's charisma because you're a sorcerer-based monster spellcaster. And then your proficiency bonus. And then you're going to have more of a simulation of the wizard throwing their absolute best in spell power against the sorcerer, enemy sorcerer, who's summoning their best sorceress spell power magic to throw back at the wizard and tying each other up. Let's throw our best at our best. The way they're implementing it right now, it's like the characters get to throw their best, basically, but the monsters kind of get shafted and they don't get to do their best, which means that the players just predominantly are going to win more, which is kind of how the game is set up. So maybe you can't fault them for that, but it feels unsatisfying for me. So, which is why, like, for instance, if you go to Lair magazine, issue 23, Warfare and Wizardry, my team and I literally put out our own spell dueling system. We introduced mechanics for some other things related to spellcasting as well, but spell dueling was one of the things that we put out there. And it's basically how I just described it to you. We also put in the mechanic of opposition schools and being able to cast spells from opposition schools and different things that would make it even feel more like spell dueling. Like, for instance, if somebody were casting a fireball at me and if I had like a different opposition school spell, like fireball is evocation and the opposition spell is like, gosh, if I know, I'm horrible at spell schools. But if I knew what it was and I had the opposition school, I could use that spell slot or that spell and throw it back at it, and I would get an advantage on it. So not advantage, but I would get like a modifier, like a +1 or a +2 or something. And so that's what we did when we made our spell dueling system. And I feel like that encompasses it makes it feel more like an actual spell duel. Like when you think of spell dueling, as opposed to just like, oh, cast a level 3 spell and it goes away. So those are most of my criticisms, I suppose, on Counterspell as they put it forth in their new proposed changes. But there's more. There's more to this than just the spell and the changes and the mechanics behind it. So this is something that I've talked about before. I think I made an entire video on this at one point, but these changes to Counterspell, the mechanics are completely missing the point. I don't think it's a mechanical issue at all. I think my personal opinion is that the existence of Counterspell makes the game worse for both players and game masters. Why? They Counterspell falls inside this group of you don't get to play the game abilities. This idea of like, I do this thing and now you can no longer play the game. Before the stream started, we were talking about stun and how when you stun someone, they can no longer play the game. They're done for their next round and they just sit there and watch you. Other spells fall into this. Banishment. If I, as a game master, banish one of my player's characters, or if I upcast banishment and I banish, say, 2 of them or 3 of them, guess what? Those 2 players or 3 players, they're sitting there and they're not playing the game. They're just going to sit there and watch, essentially. Or if I polymorph them. I once had a player that I polymorphed into a clam, I believe. And he just sat there for an hour or something, not playing the game because he was polymorphed into a clam. And there were things that they could do and they were trying to do stuff to help him, but it took a long time before he was unpolymorphed. And so he basically didn't get to play the game. And that's when I was starting to see, you know, these categories of spells and these things that will basically take people out of the game and make it unenjoyable for them. Wall of Force can be an example of this. Force Cage is an excellent example of this. Because Force Cage just lasts for an hour. It's not concentration. It's a 7th level spell, so it is powerful. But you're stuck inside of it and there's nothing you can do about it. You're just stuck there for an hour. And I did this in my Sword Coast Guard group game. And Nigel, I believe, was the character, and he literally sat inside this force cage, and like I think we looked up the spell or something. I think there was some debate about this is crazy, you know, and somebody looked up the spell and they were like, look it's force cage, it lasts for an hour. And then the player who was playing Nigel, Aaron, was like, wait, it lasts for an hour? Okay, I'm gonna take a short rest while you guys are fighting, you know. And so he literally was like trapped in force cage for an hour and took a short rest, and he just didn't play that entire combat. He sat that combat out. And so these are this category of things where you don't get to play the game. And I think that things in the game mechanics in the game that essentially take somebody out of the game and don't let them play are bad. They ruin the experience of people because you're not getting to play the game. Now, I just gave you examples and stories of me taking my players out of the game. I now almost never cast those spells, not in a way that's going to take people out of the game. You know, Wall of Force or Force Cage or Banishment or Polymorph. I intentionally don't have my bad guys use those spells because I want my players to play the game. And so I think that Counterspell falls in that category of spells that essentially make someone not play the game. If I have a player who is a wizard and my bad guy spellcaster counterspells them, well, that's all they did for that round. They're not playing the game that round. And guess what? That bad guy, he's got several slots. He can keep on counterspelling my wizard. He can start upcasting perhaps and keep counterspelling him. The wizard might not get to play the game. Like that fight, they might just sit out and not get to play the game. And the converse is true too. If the wizard is counterspelling my caster, then my caster is not getting to cast into their spells either. And so it falls into that category of not being able to play the game, and I don't like that. I think that makes the game more unsatisfactory for folks. It's not you come to the game table to play the game, right? You don't come to the game table to just sit there while your character can do nothing and you just watch. Like, that doesn't make the game fun. I know, because I've seen the look on my players' faces when they get counterspelled. I've seen it. They're just disappointed and they're like, oh, this sucks. You know, and I'm sure they've seen the look on my face too when I get counterspelled and I'm disappointed and I'm like, oh, this sucks. The other thing with counterspell that I don't like is that it disproportionately targets the game master's spellcasters. For instance, the characters, the player characters, like if you have a wizard, if the player has a wizard, let's say, he's only going to have to worry about counterspell every so often because enemy spellcasters that have counterspell aren't all over the place. And so once in a while, he's going to get counterspelled and have to worry about it. But if I am as the game master, every single time I roll out an enemy spellcaster, I'm going to have to worry about getting counterspelled because the wizard's always there. And so all of my bad guy spellcasters are getting counterspelled every single time. You guarantee you, almost always they're going to counterspell me. They might identify the spell first and decide, oh, it's a cantrip, we'll let it go. But if it's anything impactful, if it's anything cool and exciting, if it's something that I was planning and looking forward to because, oh, this will be so cool, this will make it's going to get counterspelled. And so it disproportionately punishes the game master, in my opinion. And it kind of makes it crappy. You're like, you're excited for your monster, your spellcaster monster, and he just gets shut down and can't do anything in the game. So I don't like that just as a game master, right? It also removes one of the most exciting elements of the game, magic, right? Like, magic is part and parcel of Dungeons and Dragons. It's like embedded into the game system, and people like it and they love it. You know, you have like brand new players who know nothing about the game and they're like, I want to be a spellcaster. Why? Because magic is cool and exciting, you know? And so Counterspell just takes that out. Like, you're not throwing fireballs anymore and doing all these cool things because Counterspell. And so I think it removes that excitement and that cool part of the game, which is, I just don't think that's fun. I don't think that's enjoyable and cool. So I don't like that. However, I don't like it. I know that a lot of people do like Counterspell. For instance, if you're a player, you probably don't want the bad guy casting horrible spells on you because you want to win. So yeah, if you're able to counterspell whatever horrible thing they were doing, like that's good for your side because whatever bad thing was isn't going to happen to you now. So I understand that players like that. I know that when I'm a player, like, I don't like taking damage because I feel I'm going to die or something. It's, you know, it's a little bit woo. So I get why people will like being able to counter bad guys. It also adds additional tactics to combat. Like, for instance, you know, do you cast Counterspell or not? Which spells do you choose to Counterspell? And your positioning, you got to make sure you're within 60 feet. You got to make sure you can see them. There are certain parts of the game, the combat element, the tactics in combat that Counterspell improves upon slightly. So I know that there are lots of people that like Counterspell, and every time I bring up, like on Twitter or somewhere, like, you know, that I don't like Counterspell, there's lots of people who are like, well, we've never had a problem with it. We like it, etc. So I know there are lots of people that like it. I know that there are. So the question is, how can you fix it then? Like, if you don't like it as a spell or as a part of the game, or if you don't like the mechanics of it, you know, how can you fix it to make it better? That's the question. So that's what I want to look at right now. So most of the debate does focus on how to fix the mechanics of Counterspell, and we've delved in the mechanics, and I think that their proposed changes, the mechanics are less than spectacular. I really hope those don't go through as is because it's really, really poor. They really need to do like a spell dueling idea like I proposed, or have the saving throw be related to your ability score, your primary ability score that you use for spell casting. That should be the constitution. That should be the saving throw that you roll. However, we focus a lot on the mechanics of it, but I think that the mechanics are just part of it, right? Sometimes it just doesn't feel satisfactory. And I know that Sky Flourish did a blog in 2016, and his answer to Counterspell, the problem of Counterspell, was role-playing it at the game table. So you're describing what's happening. And if you think about it, if you think about like the idea of spell dueling and spellcaster throwing a fireball and another one throwing some sort of water spell that's going to like envelop the fire and put it out and stuff. If you're describing that sort of thing at your game table, then it's going to become more cinematic, more interesting and stuff. And I think generally speaking, when we talk about or we think about describing things, narrating things, that generally speaking makes the game better. It elevates your game, right? And so I think if you do the same thing for Counterspell, yeah, it's going to make it better. It will make it better, but that could be said about anything. Like if I just describe swinging my sword with a little bit of detail, then that's going to make the game a little bit better for lots of folks, as opposed to just rolling dice and then calling off the numbers and damage. So in a general way, narrating things and describing things elevates every part of the game. So yes, of course, it's going to also elevate this part of the game that's Counterspell, right? I personally think if you want to have the game mechanics, if you want to have Counterspell, then do spell dueling, like I suggested. But I think it should probably just be removed from the game. Like I said, it's that category where you shut people down, where you don't let them play the game. And it doesn't matter if I am narrating it and I'm describing it. The fact remains that somebody isn't getting to play the game. And so I think it should just be pulled out of the game. In general, mechanics that take the players and game masters out of the game are just bad. And in the case of Counterspell, it disproportionately punishes the game master. And man, game masters, they deserve to have fun too, right? Like, why should there be a game mechanic that disproportionately punishes me? You know, like, I want to have fun and play my bad guys and cast spells as well, you know? And so I think that that's another reason that I think that it's unsatisfactory. It doesn't feel good. I think it should just come out of the game. But, you know, I think there's a lot of people that think otherwise, obviously. So that's probably not going to happen. Which kind of brings up the question, why are we clinging to Counterspell? I think there's probably a few reasons. One of them is tradition. Counterspell was in the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Player Handbook in 1978. That's when it made its debut, and it's been a part of. I mean, I haven't checked every single version, but more than likely, Counterspell has been in every single version since then. So tradition has it that you have Counterspell in the game, and when you take something out of the game that has always been there, folks tend to get upset about that, and so taking it out is probably not going to happen. You also have the idea of spell wizards dueling, which I've talked about before. We see it in movies, we see it in books. The iconic idea of casting the fireball, the water spell enveloping it and stuff. And it's very cinematic, it's very cool. When you watch it in movies, the wizards spell dueling, like Harry Potter does this a bit, it can look really amazing and cool. The problem is that what looks good in movies and books and stuff doesn't always translate to coolness and fun in a game. Because of there are obviously differences between a movie and a game. So not everybody is going to find that element that they might find fun in a movie, also fun in a game. In my case, I don't find it particularly fun. So that leads us to, what do I do with Counterspell in my games? Do I just ban it? No, I don't ban it. I mostly allow it as is. I use my spell dueling rules that I mentioned before, but mostly Counterspell exists. You can use it. I know players enjoy it. I know that people do, and I don't want to remove a part of the game that some people find fun. Like, I know I don't like it, but that doesn't mean I'm just going to yank it out of there, because I know that there are players that do enjoy it in the game. So I don't personally ban the thing. However, I do have a deal with my players. What I tell my players is that if you counterspell my enemies, I will counterspell you. Like, that's the way that it's going to work. So if you don't counterspell me, I won't counterspell you, and we can both play the game and be happy about it. They don't always decide to not use it. Like I said, I think I have one player in one of my games that uses Counterspell a little bit. So I still don't think I use Counterspell on her almost ever. I should probably change that. I also go to certain links to ensure that my bad guys can cast their spells. Like, and this is tactics. This is part of the tactics of combat. So I will stay 65 feet away when I'm casting a spell that has a larger range. A lot of spells have a range of like 120 feet. And so I will stay 65 feet away to make sure that I don't get counterspelled. I will ready a spell from around the corner, pop around the corner, and then use my readied action to have the spell go off. And so that way, since I cast it around the corner as a readied spell, they couldn't see me, they couldn't counter it, and then I pop around the corner and it goes off as a readied action, as using my reaction, and then the spell can go off. So I'll do that, and other people do that all the time as well. I will, instead of just deploying one monster that is a spellcaster, I'll have two of them. One of them will get countered, and the other one can actually cast their spells. Spellcasters in pairs to support each other. And then also, my monsters will have counterspell themselves. So if the wizard tries to counterspell my enemy sorcerer, they'll counterspell my spell, I'll counterspell their counterspell, and then my spell goes off. It's the classic chain that has been discussed in thread upon thread upon thread, and it works that way. So I do use these methods, and because I use these methods, I know how things work, and I use these methods, I'm still able to have fun and play the game and cast spells and do cool stuff. And so I've found workarounds to it. And I think a lot of people will naturally ask, well, isn't that like cheating then, or nerfing the PC abilities? Like, you're doing all of these things to bypass the fact that they can cast counterspell. That's the typical objection that you're going to see. And I think that the answer is clearly no, because in a world where counterspell exists, like, all spellcasters should be taking these precautions. Like, if you know that you can get counterspelled, then you should make sure that, like, and if you, especially if you know that somebody on the other side is a wizard or a spellcaster of some sort, then you should take precautions. If counterspell is a thing, you take precautions. It's just what you do when you're a wizard or a sorcerer and you know that this is part of the game. This is part of the world that you live in. You take precautions. So I don't consider that nerfing or bypassing their abilities at all. I think that that is just role-playing your caster and being smart about it and not, yeah. So I don't have a problem with it at all. But anyway, those are just my thoughts on Counterspell. And we're going to pop into the comments now and see what folks think. All right, that was my, oh, dude. I'm gonna go over here. I had a player storming away from the table because they got counterspelled. We are the only ones allowed to do this. Is that what they said, really? Oh, wow. That's dumb. You know, that is very interesting. That they stormed away because they got counterspelled illustrates how crappy it is to get, how bad you feel when you get counterspelled. Like, they were so upset they got counterspelled. They're like, this sucks, man. I didn't get to do anything. And they storm away and they're upset about it. So that totally makes sense. Yeah, that's a good illustration. Yeah, I have lots of bad attitudes. Fred Haskey. I'm a very bad person. You should probably, yeah, don't listen to me, man. What about a skill for the counterspell for PF2 second edition and have mastery levels for it, enhances the dual feat? Sure, you could do that. Is there a skill? I don't think Pathfinder 2 has a skill for counterspell, do they? I forget the exact details, but there was one implementation I remember from another edition where you can only counter spells you yourself have prepared. What do you think of that? I saw a thread on Twitter about 3.5. Like 3.5 had a counter spell. That might have been 3.5 or something. I mean, it sounds interesting. The idea that, like, you can only counterspell a spell that you already have prepared, sure. But it still doesn't change the fact that you're making somebody not play the game, you know? And there are certain spells everybody's gonna have, like Fireball. Everybody packs Fireball because it's 8d6 damage, which is disproportionately a lot of damage for third level. That's way more damage than any other spell at that level does. So everybody has Fireball, which means that Fireball will always get countered. So you're never gonna have that in the game. Which means, why are you taking it? Well, the only reason you take Fireball is to be able to counterspell other people. I don't know. Yeah, Legendary Resistance can prevent Counterspell with the new rules. Yes, that's correct. Silvery Barbs. Yeah, Silvery Barbs is... Like, when I was looking at all of these threads about Counterspell, Silvery Barbs came up a lot, too, as one of those things that people just ban. And I don't remember the details of it. None of my players have actually taken Silvery Barbs. I don't think that I've banned it. I usually don't ban things until somebody uses it in my game and I see how bad it is. And that's usually when it gets banned. There's only been like 1 or 2 things that I preemptively banned. Most of the time I don't do that until it gets used. And then I see in practice how bad it is. Because sometimes the thing is that there are things that, like, will look bad on paper, but when you actually play with it in the game, you're just like, it's not that big of a deal. And so I usually like to have it in the game to get a feel for it before I'm just like banhammer it, you know? But people have had Silvery Barbs. So Sarah's apparently had Silvery Barbs and she thinks it's a nightmare. Also, under the new counterspell rule, you can't counterspell a spell cast by a magic item. Why? Like, most magic items say that you cast the spell. So why wouldn't you be able to counterspell a spell cast by a magic item? Yeah, I really hate having crits taken away. Crits are like a fun, exciting moment, and then when you get told no, you can't have a crit, it feels really crappy. You only ban things that players think should be. So if they don't think it's OP, then I will also use those things against them. I mean, if they use it against you, use it against them is a fair tactic, right? But you know that it depends on your group, but players aren't always unbiased, right? Like, players have their biases. Like, you know, like it depends, right? Sometimes players can be. I have some players who are very level-headed and they're not biased. You know, I've had other players who will be extremely biased in their own favor, and they'll have this overpowered ability thing or whatever, and they won't want to ban it. No way, because they want it to be overpowered. They want it, you know, power gamers, stuff like that. And so that's probably, I don't know. I personally would tread cautiously with that. I always get input from my players before I make a decision about things. I'll ask them what they think, and we'll often have a discussion at the game table about it. But I make the final call on it. You can't counterspell as spell cast by a magic item. But I'm okay. There are literally like, hold on a second. I'm getting the player handbook so that we can look at a spell or a magic item, like a staff or something. Because it says you cast a spell. I'm pretty sure it literally says you cast a spell. Oh, I gotta look at the player handbook. I mean the dungeon master. I got the wrong one. The magic items are in the Dungeon Master Guide. I'm gonna look up a staff and see what it says. Staff of Fire. So I'm looking at Staff of Fire. It says the staff has 10 charges. While holding it, you can use an action to expend one or more of its charges to cast one of the following spells from it. You're casting the spell. It literally says you're casting the spell. Staff of Power. Spells. You can use an action to expend one or more of its charges to cast one of the following spells. Like, the spell descriptions literally say that you're casting the spell. And the Counterspell description says, when you see a creature within 60 feet of yourself casting a spell with verbal, somatic, or material components. Yeah, I don't know. I think you're casting a spell out of a magic item. That's the way it reads. It says you're casting a spell. I mean, you can house rule it that way, but rules is written the way that I see it. It says you're casting a spell, so I don't know why, based upon the wording here and here, that you wouldn't be able to do it. The items don't need the components. Yeah, they don't. Yeah, you're right, they don't. But why is that? Why does that matter? There's nothing in Counterspell that says you need these spellcasting components. It says casting a spell with verbal, somatic, or material. Or. So if I'm casting a spell with verbal components, you can counterspell me. If I'm casting a spell with somatic components, you can counterspell me. Or if it has material components, that's an or there. Or, not and. So there's nothing in there that tells me that it doesn't work. No, you are casting a spell. Mr. Gore, I literally just got done saying it. It literally says, I've read 2 item descriptions now, like, and I could keep on reading more staffs and more wands, and it literally says you expend the charge and you cast the spell. It literally says you cast the spell. Like, that's what it says. It says you're casting a spell. No, it doesn't say the item is casting a spell. It says you to expend one or more of its charges to cast one of the following spells from it. You can use an action to cast. Oh, I see what you're saying. You're saying that you're not casting it. You're saying that the item is casting the spell. Okay, I see what you're saying. to cast. Well, that's interesting. So now the game rules. Now we're in a gray realm because it doesn't actually say it says to cast. So if I'm using a magic item, am I casting it or is the item casting it? Yeah. Now I think that's gray. So now, yeah, that's going to be harder to rule on. Yeah. Okay. I get your point. Yeah, that makes sense. I think it's a gray area then. Rules as intended and rules as written. Yeah. Well, you know what? Here's my theory on rules as intended. If you intend the rule that way, write the rule that way. Like, don't give us shoddy writing and then be like, well, you know, this is what we actually intended. No, just change, like, make it like it should be to begin with so that we don't have to argue about it, and then people will be happier. Yeah, I think it would probably be a dungeon master call for a magic item. I think it would be a DM call, like who's actually casting it. I think that makes sense then. So if I were making the call, I would say that you can't counter it from an item because I don't like counterspell. So I would just say, no, you can't counter spells from items, which actually helps the players because if I, as the game master, am using a magic item to cast spells, guess what happens in 3 rounds? My players get that magic item and then they're going to use it to cast spells from it. So, you know, it helps me first, then it helps them a lot. So maybe I shouldn't make that ruling. I don't know. I don't know how I would write it. I'll tell you exactly how I would write it. I would go to Counterspell and I would strike through the whole thing and we would just take it out of the game. That's what I would do. But we're not gonna ever do that, are we? What is the definition of cast under the magic item definition in the Dungeon Master Guide? Is there a definition of cast under the magic item definition? I don't think there is. If somebody can find that reference and tell me where it is, I'll happily read it. I'm not going to look for it myself. That's a good question, though. Goliath Cleric says he would send me a message asking me to write it for him. You better believe I would, Zach. I would totally ask you to write it for me. The question is, does using a magic item require the use of verbal, somatic, or material components? Yeah, I don't know. Does it say anything in the Dungeon Master Guide about that? Now I want to know if it actually talks about. There actually probably is part about some of those things, I think. Stabs. It talks about stabs. It doesn't actually say. It doesn't talk about those things. Wearing and activating an item. Okay. Spells. Oh, okay. Oh, hold on a second. Okay. We are on page 141 of the Dungeon Master Guide, and I'm going to read this to you. Some magic items allow the user to cast a spell from the item. Allow the user. Oh, you see? Oh, we're going to keep on reading this. Some magic items allow the user to cast a spell. So now we're back to the user is casting the spell. So you actually are casting the spell. The user is casting the spell. From the item. The spell is cast at the lowest possible spell level, doesn't expend any of the user's spell slots, and requires no components. Okay, so now we have no components, which means that there's no verbal, somatic, or material components. Okay, that seals it right there. Because it doesn't require any components, it's no longer counterspellable. There you go. Because counterspell, back over here. Counterspell, a spell with a verbal, somatic, or material component. That is one of the requirements. And literally in the Dungeon Master Guide, page 141, when you are casting a spell from an item, it doesn't require any components. It says components, any components. Unless the item's description says otherwise. And the ones I was looking at did not say otherwise. And blah, 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 blah. Blah, 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 blah. I think that's it. That seals it for me. That right there seals it. You could not counterspell a spell cast from an item because of that right there. There are no components. Beautiful. Couldn't the magic item itself be considered the material component? I think at that point we're just when we ask ourselves, what is a material component? A material component is something from like a spell component pouch or something that you use in casting of the spell. And it's usually defined, what a material component is usually defined in the spell itself. Like the spell description will tell you what the component is. So once we start talking about like, is the magic item itself considered a material component? I think at that point, we're really just, we're like splitting hairs, or what is that? We're really stretching at that point. Like that is, no, I would say the answer is absolutely no to that. That doesn't make any, I can see why that reasoning might be arrived at, but I feel at that point, we're really just stretching. So I would say no, that wouldn't work. This whole discussion needs somatic components. Yeah, that would be best. I want a wand of counterspell. I would never put a wand of counterspell in the game because my players are going to get their hands on that. I would never. It's more like a readied spell. All the other stuff has been done. You just need to trigger it. Yeah, that makes sense. I agree. Yeah, what's your problem? You want your belly rubbed? I'm not rubbing your belly. This guy. I would curse the crap out of a wand of counterspell. Oh, yeah. You can't counterspell a natural caster. I don't think being a natural caster. I mean, is natural caster even defined in game terms? I don't think it is. A cursed wand. It randomly counters any spell cast. Oh, that sucks. That would be the horrible wand to give to your wizard. That's a horrible curse. Horrible curse. A single-use wand of countered spells would be a funny item to see your players think is worth countering. Oh, what about a scroll? I mean, a scroll would fit into the idea of spells. So what about a scroll since you read it? No, that's not. Gosh. It literally says on page 141, the spell is cast and requires no components. So you're reading from a scroll. I mean, that's a good point. You are reading, but again, it's almost like you're stretching because I am holding the staff, so, but you're actually reading from the scroll. And what's on the scroll? Does the scroll actually contain the verbal components that you're reading? All right, let's look up scroll. I want to look up the definition of scroll and see what that says. All right. If the spell is in your class's spell list of higher blah 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 blah. A spell scroll bears the words of a single spell written in a mystical cipher. If the spell is on your class's spell list, you can use an action to read the scroll and cast its spell without having to provide any of the spell's components. You're not providing any of the components. It literally says and what are the components? Verbal, somatic, and material. There are 3 types of components, and it literally says you don't have to provide any of the spell's components. So you're reading something from the scroll, but it's not the component of the spell, which means it's not counterspellable. That would be my interpretation of it. Because it literally says you don't use any of the components. So I would say no, you can't counterspell from a scroll either. You're reading something, but it's not the verbal component. I think that's clear from how it's written. Yes, you still have to read the scroll. You absolutely have to read the scroll, but that's not a verbal component that's counterspellable. That'd be my interpretation. All right, I'm gonna do a cat strike. I'm gonna give my cat some treats. Oh, there we go. They're coming rushing in. Let's go to the cat cam. Where's the cat cam? Oh, I got the wrong button. There we go. Yeah, just write scrolls. What? My dog woke up. My dog woke up. And she can smell the food. Alright, I gotta get some more coffee. My dog got... The dog is getting the snacks now. If only there was a solution to all these problems, like actually designing and wording things competently. That'd be too easy, Zach. Be too easy. Yeah, it's probably more like an activation word for the scroll than a true component. That would be my interpretation, based upon the rules that are there, yeah. All right. We can transition to just general Q&A at this point, I think, as opposed to beating the dead horse. I think we've beat the dead horse of Counterspell enough. So let's talk about other stuff. If you got other questions, throw them in the chat. We'll talk about different stuff. Or we can keep beating the horse on Counterspell also, I suppose. A bandolier of scrolls. And then you're a spell slinger. Yes. I think the idea of Counterspell is you recognize a spell being cast, and you have a clever way to say a magic phrase or gesture that disrupts it. It's a skill. It's a game design issue. Anything that makes you miss your turn is essentially bad game design. No, I agree, Danny. That's 100% what that's my standpoint. If something makes you not play the game, it's bad game design. Like there just shouldn't be game mechanics that make it so that you don't get to play the game. I think that is the essence of what I'm saying with Counterspell. It's bad game design because you don't get to play the game. Oh, Thorarin has a good point. It doesn't mention scrolls are read aloud at all. Most people can read with their inner voice. That's a really good point. That's a really good point. There's no reason that you have to read the scroll out loud. It doesn't. Does it say you have to read the scroll out loud? It says you can use an action to read the scroll. It doesn't say it has to be out loud. No, yeah, that's a great point. You just read it silently. Good point. Theorem of Tarovia, what's up, dude? How you doing? Yeah. Sometimes they're gonna be at 4 Eastern, but more of them will be around 6, like a little bit later in the evening. When I do it, what I run into is when I stream earlier in the day, it cuts into my work time. Like I need to be able to work, you know, for a good chunk of the day and do stuff. And when I have a stream at 4 p.m., it just messes with my work. So when I have something at 6 p.m., I have the whole day to do a bunch of work before I stream. Oh, can you read a spell scroll? No, you can't read the scroll silently. Let's not be silly. Why would that be silly? How is that silly? There's nothing in there that says read out loud. Like, all right, check this out. When you're in school, and let's say you're in history class and your history teacher says, all right, everybody get your books out, go to page 900 and read chapter 17. Does the whole class go to page 900 and start reading out loud chapter 17? No, they don't. They read quietly to themselves. It's like implied that you read it. Like when I go to bed at night, I have like I'm working through the Dragonlance trilogy right now at night. When I go to bed, I read that book. Do I read it out loud? No, because my wife would beat me over the head with a pillow or something. I read it quietly in my head. Like in our modern era, when you read something, I would say in general, even fantasy times, when you read something, it's assumed that you read it quietly to yourself. Like everybody reads quietly. That's not silly. That's like a general assumption that you read quietly to your head. Like to assume that if it says read, that it must be read out loud is silly. In fact, we have read, which could be either out loud or silently, and then we have read out loud. You know, like most times, like if I say to read something, I have to designate read out loud, or there has to be the context where I'm assuming you're reading out loud, like in a group setting or something. So I don't think it's silly at all to like assume to assume that you have to read it out loud. That's not silly at all. That's that's just normal. Hey, hi Grand Rapids, what's up? Zakskika, I can't pronounce your name, sorry. Luke does audiobook for his wife. No, my wife would not like that, not at all. Oh yes, incapacitated breaks concentration. 100% does. Yeah. Concentration checks were always linked to Constitution, but now it's a problem. Well, who said it was a problem? Who's saying that concentration checks linked to Constitution are a problem? Oh, because Counterspell. Oh, if you're being counterspelled, it's similar to maintaining your concentration. I can see that argument, but it breaks the whole idea of counterspelling. Like it breaks the idea of spell dueling. Like Counterspell to me is based in the idea of 2 spellcasters locked in a battle of power to see who's stronger with their magic. That is the thematic idea of Counterspell to me. And if I'm gonna have 2 spellcasters dueling and seeing if this one can counter the magic of the other one, then it makes sense to me that their spellcasting ability score is what should determine their success or failure. And so if I'm a spellcaster, my Constitution is usually not very good compared to my wisdom or my intelligence or my charisma, right? And so that doesn't make sense to me. I have only just noticed how huge that freaking mug of tea is. Yeah, it's huge. It's like huge. It's massive, gigantic. Coffee tonight, decaf, but it is big. No, that's the thing. Grimrock, it makes sense for physical damage. Like concentration is disrupted by physical damage. If you're concentrating on a spell and you take damage, you have to make a Constitution saving throw that's equal to half of the damage or 10, whichever is more. So it makes sense that when you take damage, it's a Constitution saving throw to maintain your concentration against taking damage. But when you're locked in a spell duel and there's magic person throwing magic at you to counter your magic, Constitution makes no sense at all. It makes sense for it to be your spellcasting ability score that is the determinant whether you fail or succeed. That makes way more sense. Have you already talked about the lack of interplay with no longer being able to cast Counterspell at higher levels to be more effective? Yeah, that's stupid. Basically, I mean, we did mention that. I don't know what you mean by lack of interplay. Maybe you can expand upon that idea and then I can address it a little bit more. But it is kind of silly to me. And this is an example I brought up, is that you could have a 5th level character who counterspells an Archmage, a CR12 Archmage, who cast a 9th level spell like Time Stop. I think Time Stop is the spell that Archmages have right out of the monster manual. So your CR5 could counterspell Time Stop cast by a super powerful caster, and that's it. Like, they cast Counterspell, it's gone. It's just gonna be gone because the Archmage's Constitution saving throw sucks. And so there's no way they're probably gonna make it. They're more than a 50% chance of failing that. So yeah, that doesn't make sense to me. Either a contested roll or a spellcasting check against the spell save DC would be better than a Constitution save. I 100% agree. 100% agree. Yeah. I believe that level up 5E allows you to cast a lower level spell using a reaction. I'm not sure about that. Most monsters no longer cast spells since Monsters of the Multiverse anyway. I don't have that book. Well, I do have that book. Kind of. I tore it all to pieces. I didn't buy that book. It had one new monster in it. The rest of it was just like, I didn't buy that book. I used the monsters from Volos and Monsters of the not Monsters of the Mordenkainen's Tomopho, Mordenkainen's or no. Yeah, Mordenkainen's Tomophos. Yeah. Volos and Mordenkainen's. I use those monsters. I did not buy Monsters of the Multiverse and give them $50 for the same monsters that I already own. I did not do that. No. Pass, thank you. So in casting blindness nerf scrolls. Well, you can't read them. Ooh, probably. Probably. A scroll says, yeah. It literally says in spell scroll, it says, if the spell is on your class's spell list, you can use an action to read the scroll. If you're blind, you can't read. So yeah, you would not be able to read a spell scroll if you're blinded. You can't read if you can't see. It doesn't work. So yeah, and that's not a nerf, by the way. It's not a nerf. It's just the way it works. You know, it's literally just an interpretation of the rules. Nobody nerfed anything. It wasn't good before, and then we made it worse. That's what a nerf is. It's just, that's the way it is. It's Braille scrolls. Oh, I mean, if you're trained in that and you get them written in Braille, sure, yeah. Yeah, you still need to see the target for most spells. Almost all spells. Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, that's true. Even if you could read the spell scroll, almost every single scroll designates that you have to be able to see your target. Every single spell designates you have to see your target, so that would still not work. No, it doesn't. If you read it already and know the command phrase, no, because it literally says you can use an action to read the scroll. So no, I would say no. Because then you're memorizing the command phrases off your scrolls. We're getting completely out of rules as written into just like supposing at this point. There was another question up top. I missed it. Let's see if I can find it. Where was it? Okay. Does ritual casting a spell require concentration? Or can someone concentrate on Polymorph and ritual cast Leomund's Tiny Hut at the same time? Couldn't find a straight answer in the books. Well, let's look up ritual casting and see if it says anything. I'm looking up ritual casting. See where it talks about ritual casting. And it is not in the appendix. I mean, the glossary at the back does not have ritual casting. So now we're going to hunt and peck. It's probably in the spell chapter. Let's go to the spell chapter. Rituals. Certain spells have a special tag, ritual. Such a spell can be cast following the normal rules for spellcasting, or the spell can be cast as a ritual. The ritual version of a spell takes 10 minutes or longer to 10 minutes longer to cast than normal. It doesn't expend a spell slot, which means the ritual version of a spell can't be cast at a higher level. To cast a spell as a ritual, a spellcaster must have a feature that grants the ability to do so. The cleric and the druid have that feature. The caster must also have the spell prepared or on his list of spells known, unless the character's ritual features. Oh, interesting. No, it doesn't say. Oh, okay, hold on a second. Down in casting a spell, it says longer casting times. Certain spells, including spells cast as rituals, require more time to cast, minutes or even hours. When you cast a spell with a casting time longer than a single action or reaction, you must spend your action each turn casting the spell, and you must maintain your concentration while doing so. See concentration below. If your concentration is broken, the spell fails, but you don't expend a spell slot. If you want to try casting the spell again, you must start over. That was on page 202 in the player handbook. Right here. That's where it literally tells you that when you're casting a ritual, it requires concentration. What's up, Squirts? Can you counterspell a ritual? What does it say? So let's go back to this. Casting time, reaction, which you take when you see a creature within 60 feet of yourself casting a spell, requiring verbal, somatic, or material components. Why would you not be able to counterspell a ritual? I don't. You can't rub against my camera, Squirty. Don't complain at me. What? So what in there leads us to believe that we wouldn't be able to counter spell a ritual? I don't see anything in there, but I might be missing something. That player handbook has lots of post-its. I'm curious what chapters you marked. Oh, I can tell you which ones. So I've bookmarked all the things I go to all the time. So the very first bookmark is a floating bookmark. I put this wherever I need to. It's in the fighter chapter right now. I was probably playing a fighter. I have one dedicated to rogue. I have a post-it note dedicated. Oh, you guys can't see me because I'm on the wrong camera. I have one that's dedicated to rogue because rogue is probably my favorite class, and I was playing this. It's probably one of the first characters I played in 5th edition. And then I have one on abilities. So abilities, because that gets used a lot when you're looking up different things. You probably can't read the post-its, so I'm gonna stop showing them to you because they're all folded and old. They've been in here for like, I don't know, 8 years or something, I would guess. I have one on the combat chapter. There's a post-it note on the combat chapter. I have a post-it note. This post-it note right here, this little tiny orange one, goes to underwater combat. It's on the page about underwater combat and fighting on a mount, controlling a mount in combat. And then the next one is spells. So the entire chapter about spells. And then the last one is the conditions. I skipped one though. Conditions is super important. Equipment. I missed equipment. I know I have one on equipment. I missed it somehow. Yeah, there's one on equipment. This one's equipment. So it'll go to the equipment chapter. You go there a lot. Yeah. I missed that one. There you go. Those are the ones I have post-it noted. I once had a player. I once, what was it, man? There was a combat taking place in a game, and a player started casting a ritual spell in the middle of combat. She thought that there was something significant about. There was something there was something in the room that she thought was very significant, and that needed to do something. They needed to do something to that item in order for them to win the combat. And so she started ritually casting a spell in the middle of combat, which would take the entire combat. It was one of those moments where, like, her supposition was completely inaccurate. She didn't need to cast. What was the ritual spell? Was it Dispel Magic? I think she was ritually can you ritually cast Dispel Magic? Maybe you can't. No, you can't. You can't do that. I forget what it was then. Maybe it was, I think it was Identify. I think she was ritually casting Identify in the middle of a combat because she thought that knowing what the magic item did was important or something. I can't remember the details. But she was ritually casting in the middle of combat. Which I don't know why I'm talking about that. Somebody in the comments said something that reminded me of that. So there you go. So would you say that blindness and or darkness nerfs all scroll usage? It's not a nerf. It's just the way it works. I don't think that's a nerf. I don't like that. I don't. We see, nerf has negative connotations. So if you say yes, it nerfs it. Oh, well, that's a bad thing. Nerf. No. That's not. My cat just puked on camera. You guys want me to do the close-up view so you can see the puke? Thanks, Squeaky. Oh my gosh. I gotta clean that up. Nerf is when something is made this way in the game, and then there's a change made that makes the thing less powerful, and there are negative connotations to it. So if you can cast blindness and somebody can't read, that's not a nerf. That's just the way blindness works. It's not a nerf. Puke. Yeah. Yes, nerfed is an overused word. Yeah, I mean, gosh, because it's people want to capital. I mean, I'm not saying that people who are using it right now, I'm not saying that you're capitalizing on the negative connotations of it, but in general, like when you hear people say the word nerf, that's the entire point. Oh, you're gonna nerf Fireball, are you? You know, you're gonna, instead of having it do 8d6 damage, it's gonna do 6d6. You're nerfing it. Well, you know, Fireball is way overpowered for its level. It probably should be nerfed, but because a nerf has a negative connotation, you know, when you apply it, it's a way. It's like, you know, it's like accusing somebody of being racist. You know, it's like there are obviously negative connotations to it and stuff. You know, but once you have that term attached to you, you know, like bad, right? So nerf is the same thing. It's just negative connotation. So if you apply it to something, it's a way to win your argument. You know, whether or not it's true, it doesn't matter if it's true or not. If you just apply the word, you can use it for your argument. You know, so yeah, nerf should be used when applicable. But you know, the other thing is that some things need to be nerfed because you want game balance. Like if Fireball had originally been designed with 6d6 damage, like it should have been, then we would never think that it's underpowered. But because it has 8d6, now if we want to put it down to something that it should be at, we think that it's, you know, a nerf and it's underpowered. My players hardly ever use scrolls anyway. They pack them away, and if they can't transcribe them immediately, that scroll is collecting dust until they can. Yeah, I mean, you want to transcribe it for sure. Now he's puking somewhere else. Gosh, now he went over there and he's puking. Now he's puking over there. Okay, that was Squeaky, by the way. Do you want to know? Do you want to know our nickname for Squeaky? Squeaky has a nickname. We call him Pukey. Not all the time, but that's his nickname, Pukey, because this is what he does. He just pukes. I need to clean that up, by the way. All right, I'm gonna clean up the puke really quick here, and you're gonna watch my dog. She's being a good dog. Look at her. She is being a good dog. All right. I cleaned up one of them. I'm gonna get the other one afterwards. That one was on camera, so I was like, I probably should clean that one up because it's literally on camera. Oh, first edition AD&D Fireball initially did 5d6. Oh, and then it would go up 1d6 per level of caster. Cool. Yeah, my dog. She was very comfortable lying there. She just ate some snacks, so she's having a nice time. How can one spell potentially negate every other spell? Spells are complicated, manipulating magical forces. So how does Counterspell work in that powerful regard? Duels using prime ability sounds better. Yeah, spell dueling does sound a whole lot better. That's why in one of our issues of Lair magazine, we presented a spell dueling system to replace Counterspell because it makes a whole lot more sense than having Counterspell. Spell dueling makes way more sense. And the reason that it does negate every other spell is because that's the way they wrote it. They designed it that way. I think that it boils down to is anytime you're about to cancel someone's turn, they should get a chance to fight you. Roll checks against you to stop it. Counterspell just nopes on that. Yeah, well, I mean, in the new version, they get a Constitution saving throw, but yeah. I mean, I agree with you. I think you should just remove game mechanics that cancel people's turns. I think that's the best solution. What is Goliath Cleric saying? That's the ultimate issue. The game is being designed around what makes players most powerful. It sure feels that way. Because the new version of Counterspell, there are some ways that it's good for a game master, but most of it is better for players. It makes players more powerful. Hands down, the new version of Counterspell. So I would agree that some of the, maybe not all the changes, I don't know, but the changes that I've seen, some of them are definitely making players more powerful. It's the same as their surveys they use for input. It's all what the players want because they outnumber dungeon masters 5-1 at a minimum. Yeah, that's very interesting. That's super interesting. So they're sending out these surveys that's getting feedback, and the majority of people are players, and so predominantly players are going to have way more feedback that is going to get listened to than game masters. And yet at the same time, game masters are the one running the game. So if you take the fun away from the game master, then maybe they don't want to run the game, but that's okay because they're going to have artificial intelligence game masters on their new virtual tabletop, which is getting undermined by Baldur's Gate 3. What who wants to bet? Who wants to bet that when their virtual tabletop finally comes out and it's not, maybe it doesn't do that well because Baldur's Gate 3 is causing so much competition. Like Baldur's Gate 3 gameplay is just way better than whatever virtual tabletop they're going to come out with. They're not going to be like, we got to find a way to kill Baldur's Gate 3. It's too much competition. Wouldn't that be interesting? Oh, you know what? We have a giveaway tonight. I have not mentioned it, but we are going to be giving away a copy of Into the Fae. It'll be signed by me to the winner, so you might want to join the giveaway, or you can get store credit on the DM Lair store. If you already have Into the Fae, you can just get store credit and get something else that you use in your games. But there's a link to the giveaway in the chat if you want to get in on that. We will draw the winner in about 10 minutes or so, because we're going to end the stream pretty soon here. So, and then we'll draw the winner. I can see them using the Baldur's Gate 3 engine as a tabletop. They've already begun working on their tabletop. So I don't think that's going to happen. I heard the Matt Mercer effect is getting overtaken by the Baldur's Gate 3 effect. Oh, that's interesting. Counterspell is also very efficient from an action economy standpoint. They should at least need to use a standard action to counterspell as well as a reaction. Oh, that's an interesting point. Yeah, it is a very action economy efficient thing too. Yeah. Which issue was that spell dueling in, and can we get the back issues? Yes, it was in. I have a link down in the description of the live stream, but I will tell you which issue it's in. It was. Hold on. Lair magazine issue 23. Warfare and Wizardry. And like I said, there is a link down in the description of this live stream where you can get it if you want to. I knew I was going to be talking about Counterspell tonight and mentioning our spell dueling, so I was like, I'll just put a link down there in case somebody wants to know. So you can get it off our store. It is available. AIDM doesn't sound like a good idea. All I'm hearing is Alexa politely saying, "Stop arguing, we're playing Raw." Wizards of the Coast has denied that they are developing AIDMs. Fair point. They also denied that they were going to do what they did with the OGL, but they did it, didn't they? However, Hasbro has confirmed they have contacted third parties to develop AI for board games. So that's in their pocket. Wizards of the Coast is absolutely going to have artificial game masters, you guys. They will absolutely do it. They would be bonkers not to have AIDMs. Bonkers. Bonkers. They would be stupid morons if they didn't have artificial dungeon masters. The only reason they're lying to you about it is two reasons. There's two reasons they're lying to you about not going to have artificial dungeon masters. The first reason they're lying to you is that they're justifying it as, this is how they're justifying their lie. So that we're not actually going to have artificial dungeon masters. What we're going to have is you're going to be able to play without a game master, because we're going to have a module for you on our virtual tabletop, and the read aloud text and the enemies will all be automated. Okay, like the computer will do it for you. The computer will read the area to you, and you'll see it on the map. And the enemy movements will all be automated. You won't need a person to do that stuff for you. And that's not an artificial dungeon master. They're not actually a dungeon master. It's just you don't need a dungeon master. They're gonna find some way. They will absolutely have it. 100%. They will have it eventually at some point, where you can go and you can get a group of players and you don't need a dungeon master. They will do it that way. They have to do it that way. That is the only way they can expand their business. I mean, going online to a virtual tabletop and microtransactions and all this kind of stuff, that's why they have all the people from Zynga and stuff, right? That's one way to expand their business. But the other thing they have to do to keep expanding their business and making the types of money that Hasbro and shareholders expect them to make is to get rid of dungeon masters, because as long as you have the need for a dungeon master, you are limiting the number of players who are actively playing your game. Like, there are way more players that want to play the game than there are dungeon masters to support them. And so if they're not playing the game, they're not buying stuff from you. They're not going on and getting the skins and all the other microtransaction things that they can get on their new virtual tabletop. They must get rid of this inhibiting factor that is the dungeon master. They have to get rid of that. Like, otherwise they can't fully monetize and fully take money out of your pocket. So they will absolutely have an artificial dungeon master, but they won't call it that. They will call it something else. And that's how they're going to justify it. Okay, but they're absolutely going to do it. And I think I just mentioned the second reason that they're going to do it, because they have to get rid of the limiting factor so that they can have everybody playing, without being required to have a dungeon master, because being a dungeon master is challenging. It's difficult. It's not the easiest thing in the world, and not everybody wants to do it. And so if you can get rid of that limiting factor that prevents your product from spreading and making tons of more money, well, then you're going to get rid of it. And they're going to do it eventually. They have to. Like, and they're working on it. I guarantee you. They're not going to call it an artificial dungeon master. And those are all the little tiny sly tricks that they're using to not have to get around that. But they're going to have it. Okay, they're going to have it. And when they launch it, people are going to say, wait, you said that you weren't going to have an artificial intelligence dungeon master. What happened? You lied to us. And they're like, no. Hold on. This is not an artificial dungeon master. That's not what this is at all. This is a way for you to be able to play the game without a dungeon master. Like, we're enabling you, we're helping you, we're bringing the game to more people. Like, we're not trying to exclude anybody. Now those forever dungeon masters, they can play the game. Like, they're totally gonna have some spectacular little marketing spiel where they're gonna pitch it and stuff, you know? And the fact of the matter is yes, okay, so some people will be upset about it, all right? And people go crazy about it. But once everybody can play the game without having dungeon masters be a limiting factor and it's just run automatically, they're probably banking on the fact that some people are going to hate them, but most people are going to just be happy to play the game because now we don't have this limiting factor of a dungeon master. And my last dungeon master was a jerk anyway, so good riddance. So I think that they're just going to do it, you know. Like, they're a company, they're a business, and they know that the dungeon master limitation, the crisis, etc., is a problem, and they have to overcome that problem. And the natural way to do that is to get rid of the dungeon master. And so, but they're not going to tell us that. They can't, because it's the same way, the same reason that they won't tell us that the version of D&D coming out in 2024 is a new version. It's the same reason, because if they say that it's a new version, sales will tank. Well, if they say that they're getting rid of the dungeon master and the dungeon master will no longer be needed, well, then guess what? Dungeon masters all over the place are probably going to be upset, and they're going to stop buying their products, and sales will tank. And Wizards knows that dungeon masters are the ones that end up buying almost everything. And so they don't want their sales to tank. So they say these things and they're doing these things because they have to. They're protecting the bottom line, right? So, but there will absolutely be an artificial dungeon master. Like, they have to have one of those. Oh my gosh, are you kidding me? Like, there's like, okay, so people are going to be upset. Some people are going to like boycott you and leave. Okay, well, la-di-da. You just, for every one person that was upset about that, you just gained 5 people who are playing your game because they couldn't find a dungeon master before. And now you're just making more money. Like, they're a business, they're a company. This is how they make decisions. You know, do they really care about people my age and older who are going to be upset and like want to step away from D&D and go play Pathfinder 2 or Dungeon Crawl Classics or Castles and Crusades or something else? Like, are they really upset to lose us? No, because they're gaining so many young people who just don't care about all that crap, you know? And like, if you're losing some older customers, right, but you're gaining a massive younger segment, that younger segment, if you can get them on your game and addicted and playing, they're going to be there for a long time spending money on your game. Like, why wouldn't you go after that customer base? So I think that they're making business decisions based upon revenue streams, right? And how to monetize. And that's what they're gonna do. And are they gonna lose some people? Yeah. Are they gonna upset some people? Sure, they will. But they're probably gonna make a whole lot more money do it. And then when they go to microtransactions and stuff on their new virtual tabletop, I mean, dude, it's gonna be money, you know? So yeah, but of course they're gonna not tell us that there are no artificial dungeon masters because, oh no. Well, that was a fun way to end the stream. We should do our giveaway now. Or are people swearing at me? Goliath Cleric's like, no swearing, please. Oh, Mr. Gore says, Luke, they didn't say we're not going to have AI DMs. They said we're not developing AI DMs, which is kind of true because they are outsourcing it. It's all of these little tiny, like, you know, loops, you know, it's like, well, we're not developing it. That's because you're paying somebody else to develop it. And then you're going to steal the company from them. Like you did with, who made D&D Beyond was made by, was it, something tells me it was Fandom, but I think I might be getting it wrong. Who was the company that designed the D&D Beyond? What was the name of that company? Fandom. It was Fandom. Okay. So basically this is how this went down, you guys. Fandom made D&D Beyond, okay? And D&D Beyond is a money-making machine, all right? And so Wizards of the Coast went to Fandom and was like, yo, we want to buy this from you. And Fandom was like, dude, we're printing money. We're not selling. Wizards of the Coast was like, okay, that's cool. But guess what? You have a license to produce D&D Beyond for 5th edition. We're going to change the edition on you, and you're no longer going to be able to do anything, and then your business goes away. And Fandom is like, you sleazy bad word I can't use on stream. Fine, we'll sell it to you. And then they sold it and they got it. So that's what happened right there. That's who we're dealing with, folks. So yeah, somebody's developing AI DMs, and it'll get used, and they'll either not call it that. No, they won't call it that, but it's also not them developing it. It's somebody else. They'll hire somebody else to develop it, and then they'll steal it from them, just like they stole D&D Beyond from Fandom. Yeah. The artificial DMs revolt because everyone keeps having scheduling issues. I bet, man. What a dystopia we're going to. Uh-huh. It feels that way sometimes, doesn't it? We know what happens every time an AI gets in contact with reality. It gets shut down because the AI becomes what everyone hates. Well, it's probably mimicking and copying human behavior. Bustards? Bustards is the word I'm looking for, yes. How will an AI deal with the scheduling spiral of death? You can't deal with that. The scheduling spiral of death has killed more games than any other known entity in the multiverse. Nobody can deal with the scheduling spiral of death. Artificial intelligence can't solve it. Wizards of the Coast can't solve it. Hasbro can't solve it. Like Paizo, nobody out there can solve the scheduling spiral of death. It is a creature. It is the monster of the multiverse that spans all known existences and realities and continuums, that is completely and totally unsatiable and will consume everything that we know. You cannot defeat the scheduling spiral of death. It's undefeatable. All right, let's draw the winner to the giveaway. Draw the winner to the giveaway. I gotta find this. Going to the giveaway. Going to the giveaway, drawing the winner now. Yeah, boy. I told my wife that I was gonna end after 2 hours, and then she's like, "Yeah, right. You're gonna keep on talking," and she said, "If you're not done after 2 hours, I'm gonna come down in the basement and play an alarm sound on my phone." And that's what she just did. I don't know if you heard it, but she just played an alarm sound, and I told her that I was gonna end. Okay. Anyway, I'm gonna draw the winner now. Wee, draw the winner. Draw the winner. Wee. Not very many people signed up to it because I forgot to talk about the giveaway. All right, I gotta look this dude up. See what his YouTube name is. Oh, it's not gonna tell me. Why won't you show me his YouTube name? I'm having a hard time. Gleam changed their interface and stuff. And now it used to tell me, I used to be able to see the answers to all of their questions. Oh, I think I got it. Okay, here we go. Okay, Rebar, you have won. I think that's your YouTube name. Yeah, it is. Okay, Rebar, dude, you won. I'll be emailing you. Yeah, my wife is hilarious. Okay, we're done. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful evening. Thanks for hanging out. Congratulations, Rebar. I'll send you an email. Rebarb won the custard. Yeah, he won something. So, all right. Good chat, guys. Good chat. I'll be on next week. All right, I gotta shut this crap down. Find the buttons. Find the buttons.